Greg, I think you're muted.
So we're going to start again. Those are some of the technical issues that I was talking about that you don't know at all that I was even talking about it. So we'll go ahead and rewind. This is the fun thing about virtual things and a whole new setup. We've been doing these from home for so long. Now we're back in the office. So let's go ahead and start from square one. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Arts as a Tool for Healing and Wellness. This webinar is part of an ongoing partnership between the UAB National Alumni Society and UAB Office of Planned Giving. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Just a quick note that I was trying to tell everybody just moments ago, since we're virtual, don't be surprised if you see something that might be out of place or technical issues pop up. If you have any video or audio issues, not muted like me, just go ahead and click the reconnect button at the top of your screen. That will get you back to the webinar quickly. So at this time, I would like to introduce Kimberly Kopic, Director of Development for the UAB Office of Planned Giving, to introduce today's guest. Kimberly.
Great. Thank you, Greg. It's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce our speakers. Kimberly Kirklin is the Director of UAB Arts and Medicine. In 2002, Kimberly began her career in arts administration at UAB's Alys Performing Arts Center. It was there that she learned about the importance of the arts and its impact on a well-rounded education as a tool for building and strengthening communities, and more recently, as an invaluable modality to enhance healing and to improve quality of life throughout the lifespan. In 2013, she led an effort to expand the Alys Center's reach into the healthcare community, starting partnerships with Children's of Alabama and the Alabama Center for Childhood Cancer and Blood Disorders. She co-created an arts and medicine pilot program at UAB Hospital. The pilot program expanded in 2014 and is now the UAB Institute for Arts and Medicine, known as AIM, a partnership between the Alys Center and UAB Medicine. AIM strives to enhance healing and wellness for patients, families, healthcare staff, and the community through creative engagement. Kimberly has a Bachelor of Music and Musical Theater from the University of Miami in Florida, master's degrees in Art Administration and Arts and Medicine, and is currently pursuing graduate coursework in Public Health and working toward a master's in Mental Health Counseling from UAB. We are also joined by Elizabeth Vanderkamp, an artist in resident at UAB's Institute for Arts and Medicine. Elizabeth earned a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. She has worked in the field of human services and is a professional actress and writer in both Boston and New York City. She toured the United States and Canada with her one-woman tour de force about the 20th century's greatest athlete, Babe Dietrichson Zacharias. Upon returning to her home city of Birmingham, Elizabeth returned to human services as an aquatic specialist working with people living with MS and Parkinson's disease at Lakeshore Foundation. She was part of the pilot program, which became the UAB Institute for Arts and Medicine in 2014. As an artist in residence, Elizabeth offers bedside storytelling and oral history gathering. She teaches workshops in Zentangle, a visual art form, and facilitates Right to Heal programs. Elizabeth is the co-founder of the Listening Project and is currently pursuing certification as the facilitator of compassionate listening. Ladies, we are so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. We are thrilled to be here. And at this time, we'll start our PowerPoint presentation. So just a few details about arts and medicine at a glance. You heard our mission, but it is to enhance healing and wellness for patients, families, and staff, and the communities we serve. We have served over 130,000 people since our pilot in 2013. And surprisingly, we served almost, by now it probably is 40,000 people since March of 2020. And that, of course, was thanks to the many people we reached through YouTube. But we have been seeing people in person and doing a lot of Zooms as well. We provide services not only to UAB Hospital, but also to Children's of Alabama, St. Vincent's East. We work in HUD-subsidized senior living residencies. And we work with populations that include adults and children with disabilities and people with chronic conditions and mental health disorders. Our team is a part of multiple research studies. We've co-authored 4 peer-reviewed papers. We have 1 under review. We're currently working on 3 IRB-approved research studies with 1 project currently under review. And we're really excited. We have an incredible partnership with the School of Health Professions Occupational Therapy program. We love that collaboration. And as part of that, the occupational therapy program has a new doctoral program. And so our AIM team is teaching a creative occupations course. So I just wanted to give a real quick overview of where AIM lives at UAB. So it's a part of UAB Visual and Performing Arts, which of course is Alys Stevens Center, AVA, the Visual Art Institute, Art Play, Education, and Community Engagement, and then of course Arts and Medicine. And so Arts and Medicine grew out of Art Play, which we opened in 2011. And of course now it is its own program and project. And it's also important to note that our funding comes almost entirely from sponsorships, grants, and donations and fees for the services that we provide. So sometimes people may think that we're fully supported by the university, but all the programs that we do have to find or raise funding for. So whenever we have a talk about arts and health, it's always really important to explore the origins of creativity. And so, we'll take a look here at some of the earliest known examples of creativity. And a lot of the art and the creative expression, we really started to see it about 40,000 years ago, but there's been documented artwork that goes as far back as 200,000 years ago. And what's interesting about the Venus of Tantam that is shown in the slide, this is one of the earliest known, or it's arguably the earliest known example of sculpture. And the Venus of Tantam might be one of the earliest Venus figurines, which are believed to have been part of fertility rituals. So that could be one of our earliest examples of arts and health. While the human voice is believed to be the earliest instrument, other musical instruments have been around again for 40,000 plus years. So this is an example of a flute made from bird or other animal bone. And there also were examples of drums that were recovered in the graves from Upper Paleolithic times. And so we can see that there are a number of musical instruments and examples of art. And then as we get a little closer to modern day, so maybe 30,000 years ago roughly, or 20,000 years ago, things started to become more representational. So in these images, you can see that that there are depictions of lions and rhinoceros, and then in the one on the right, more of a human type figure, which could be representation of agriculture, and that's debatable. So what is art for? Well, Ellen Desanayaki, she is a pioneer in the field of evolutionary aesthetics, has done a lot of work in this area. And so what she posits is that art makes things special. So, pottery that was unearthed from thousands of years ago had, oftentimes a scene with decoration that didn't serve really a purpose other than to be purely decorative. Also, it can shape and create some sense of control over everyday life. And then, and this is really a key factor, I think, is making socially important activities gratifying physically and emotionally, like part of social and religious rituals, rites of passage. And this could be why also arts and public health is also becoming a really important field. And then music. There are a number of theories on music and its role in our evolution. One of those is that it developed from motherese, the audible and visible gestural and linguistic behaviors of the infant-mother relationship. So the sing-song way that we speak to our children. So those are some of the theories. And then arts and healing rituals. Well, they've been around again for thousands of years. So again, in 40,000 BCE, about that time, it's believed that shamans or traditional healers started to come into practice. And that's evidenced by drums, different instruments that have been found in graves, but they believed shamans used dance and theatrics and costumes as a part of healing rituals. And scientists continued to find written evidence of the arts infused in healing rituals in ancient Greece, Egypt, and Rome. And here in this slide, if you look at the middle picture, that is the temple of Asclepius. So Asclepius was the son of Apollo, who was the god of, he was healer, musician, and poet. And Asclepius, well, so people would go to the temple and for healing. And the healing looked like, basically, it was theatrical reenactments of dreams. So again, here in Greek culture, they're using theater as a healing practice. And also, even in today's traditional cultures, healing practices are still infused with the arts. And the arts continued to have a role in healing up until about the 19th century with the discovery of germs and infection. But of course, now we're bringing that back. But also interesting to note is the rod of Asclepius. So that might look familiar. It's the symbol of medicine. That's the American Medical Association uses that. And that is the rod of Asclepius. So little trivia there for you. Now, how do we experience the arts? So aesthetics is a field that looks at art as a form of knowing or a means of conveying the truth. And so art and aesthetics can make ordinary moments feel extraordinary. It can create a heightened sense of awareness in the present moment. It can create a sense of beauty and awe and intense emotion. And it can create new and meaningful perspective about ourselves and the world. And then when we look at narrative and stories, which of course Elizabeth will tell us about in a few moments, they elicit emotion, empathy, and understanding by highlighting individual and community experiences. Human connection, we know, is so important for health and wellness. Meaning making, another a place of healing and catharsis, and self-transcendence. And so now we look at what is health. So the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. So we do pretty well here in the West with curing disease, curing illness, but we know that just because the illness is cured or we're treating it, really the mind, body, and the spirit is really central to having that whole person health. And so when we look back at what the arts can do for us, there is a lot of automatic connections for healing. And so that's really what we we work to achieve with arts and medicine. And of course, there's so many studies about meditation and how that impacts health. The whole field of psychoneuroimmunology is really wonderfully fascinating, looking at how psychology and neuroscience impact immune function and physical health. So there's a lot of work being done in this area, and so the arts is a great fit for this type of holistic healing. As you've heard, our mission is to transform physical spaces and the healthcare environment, as well as enhancing healing. So it's a whole person approach to care, and it's a holistic approach. So again, we strive to meet the needs of the whole person: mind, body, and spirit. So we do this in two ways. One is the environment of care. So again, we're looking specifically at arts and healthcare. And so we can offer live performances in public areas. Of course, a lot of that was limited during the pandemic, but our violinist, Haley, has been back, and she plays in public spaces. And then we also have visual art in the space. We create our own artwork. We engage patients and staff as well to help make art. An example of that is in the lower right corner. That's one of two quilts that are hanging in the Women and Infant Center. And they were made by over 100 patients, visitors, staff, and comprised of over almost 2,000 of these little hexagon fabric pieces. And so one of our artists, Liz Taylor, then created the piece out of it. But we also have, we've created a mural in the Center for Psychiatric Medicine. That's what you can see up on top. And it really does impact the space. We haven't done any formal studies on this, but anecdotally, oftentimes there might be some destruction on different units just because of the level of illness of the patients. And so there might be need to call in facilities or maintenance to repair a wall or something of that nature. But since this has been up for 6 years about, and it's in the main day space in the adolescent unit, and it covers a really large wall. There's only been one small bit of damage to it in that time, and it was repaired because people don't want, they appreciate that in the space. And the other way we approach healing is through engagement. So what does this look like? So this could be at the bedside with an artist in residence, or it could be in group workshops. So we have artists in residence who work primarily with us in UAB Arts and Medicine at UAB Hospital and some other of our facilities as well. And they are professional artists, additionally trained to navigate the complex healthcare environment, as well as work with a variety of populations. And so we have artists in the visual arts, dance and movement, storytelling, theater, musicians, writing. And then there is the separate field of creative arts therapies. And so that is music therapy, art therapy, there's dance and movement therapy, drama therapy, and this is these are health professions, so they're clinicians that have gone through additional education, receiving additional certification to provide therapy. And so the therapy, they use arts modalities to achieve therapeutic goals. And so the main difference is, of course, the education, the experience, but also they're the goals. With arts and medicine or artists in residence, our goal is to meet patients where they are, to recognize that they are a whole human with a variety of experiences, with families, with a whole lifetime of experience. And so We use the creativity as a way to create connections, so that human connectivity, and maybe even remind people of who they are when they're not in the hospital. So we work with both creative arts therapists and artists in residence. Music therapy at UAB Hospital is a separate department, and it's been with us, at UAB for many years. And then we work with music therapists and art therapists in some of our other facilities as well. So just to give you some specific examples of what the work looks like, this is Melissa Turnage. She's our dance and movement specialist. And she works at the bedside, and she does a lot of work in the hospital, specifically with Center for Psychiatric Medicine. She works with geriatric psych patients, as well as adolescents and other adult populations. But this is a great example. That middle photograph is a really good example of connecting a patient with their passions and loves that they have outside of the hospital. So this young woman is a dancer, and she was in the heart-lung transplant unit for quite a while. And Melissa was able to come and play some music and then go through some movement as well with her. And I'm having a phone call. That's not used to office phone calls. But yeah, so a great way to, again, connect her with who she is when she's not in the hospital. So perhaps even for a few moments, the walls can fall away, and she is who she truly is, which is so much more than a patient waiting for an organ transplant. Here's another example of some of the work that that we do. So this is Helene Taylor, is one of our artists in residence. She does a lot of work with the adolescent population in the Center of Psychiatric Medicine. And what's so beautiful that she speaks about often is that it's a powerful way for everybody, but especially adolescents who are going through a challenging life development stage, but also experiencing moderate to severe mental illness. And so the arts gives them another outlet to express their feelings beyond talking, which we know talk therapy and is so important, but this gives them another outlet just to express themselves, to play, and to be kids. And the picture in the middle, that the patients would lay down and they would draw an outline of their body. But two patients just started teaming up and working collaboratively together and directing. One patient was directing the other about how he wanted her to kind of fill in, the image of his body. And so, again, the arts do such an incredible job at building teams and teamwork. And of course, that's a whole nother world of arts education, but we see it with our adolescent population. And just one other thing, Melissa was doing a dance workshop in our adolescent psychiatry unit, and one young woman told her immediately following was, "Oh wow, I didn't know I could speak without speaking." And so it can be very powerful to express your emotions and your thoughts through movement. Textile work is another big part of what we do at Arts and Medicine, the hospital. We do this as a group workshop, and many of the women who are in the high-risk obstetrics unit may be there for 2 weeks or even longer, sometimes months. And so what we do here is create a workshop, and many of the women have not had much experience sewing or doing hand sewing or embroidery. And so what happens is they come together in a group. They oftentimes might just be in their room alone, as their family members may have to go back to work if they're there for long periods. And so it forms, just while this isn't our intention, it forms a sort of like a support network, a support system where the women can talk to each other. They're also learning a new skill, which we see increases self-confidence. This is studied in the literature, but we see this also anecdotally. And we've had instances where, one woman might get really excited about it because, of course, they can take then all the supplies into their room and do it whenever they would like. And she ended up making multiple quilts for other moms and friends. So it also adds that kind of sense of control over a situation that they might have very little control over. So I'll turn it over to Elizabeth in just a moment, but I just wanted to show that the field of arts and medicine, the field of arts and health, there's also a newly emerging field called NeuroAesthetics or NeuroArts, where they're looking at measurable differences in the brain and how that's impacted by, the brain is impacted by aesthetics, music, etc. But some of the research supports that, of course, arts can reduce stress levels, perceived pain. Those were the two things that we saw in our pilot study that we did in 2013. Improved mood, of course, it provides a distraction from medical problems. There can be a reduced need for pain medication, faster recovery. Also, of course, allowing for self-expression and creativity, which provides opportunities for that meaning making, that self-transcendence, where there is evidence, absolutely, that supports us in our healing. Of course, arts aren't going to cure a disease, but healing is so much more than simply or than singularly curing a disease, which of course is extremely vital. But it also can improve quality of life, social connectedness. Another thing that we know, research supports that loneliness and isolation can actually lead to early mortality, especially for senior adults. So this is a good way to promote social connectedness, provides a sense of control over your experience when you do not have possibly a lot of control if you're a patient in a hospital. And as we said, the acknowledgement of the whole person. The World Health Organization commissioned a scoping review of arts and health that was done in 2019. And some of their findings showed that it can help prevent the onset of mental illness and age-related physical decline, and support the treatment or management of mental illness, non-communicable diseases like cancer, which we have a community choir that we're working on that's got inspired by evidence from some community choirs in the United Kingdom, and neurological diseases. And then it can assist in both acute and end-of-life care. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Elizabeth Vanderkamp.
Elizabeth, I think you pulled exactly what I just pulled. No audio. Oh, hit the other one.
Am I now?
Okay, we can hear you. We can't see you. Hit the circle on the left. Perfect.
That. Okay. Hello again. I am, as you heard, Elizabeth Vanderkamp, and thank you so much, Kimberly, for that. I love hearing the history of art and how important it is to us as human beings. So all you human beings out there that I cannot see or hear, that I'm just trusting there are people out there, I'm going to ask you to imagine something. I'd like you to imagine that you are a patient at UAB Hospital. Let's say that you've been there for 2 days. You have had very little sleep because people have to come and make sure you're all right and check your vital signs, and nobody's maybe quite sure what's going on with you, but they're definitely going to figure it out because there's a great team of medical professionals taking care of you. And there's a knock at your door. And you say, come in, and here's a person that maybe it's a chaplain, or maybe it's a social worker, maybe it's a doctor without their lab coat. But no, this person introduces herself and says, hello, I'm Elizabeth from Arts and Medicine, and my art is storytelling. Would you like a story? Now, I can't see you, but I'm going to demonstrate for you the faces that often come on people's faces when I say that. And people say things like, I'm not 5 years old, or are you kidding? Or do you work here? Or sure, have a seat, which is what you're all saying, even though maybe you're not saying that. So storytelling, as we saw, that is one of the oldest art forms. As soon as we could talk, we started telling stories. And I am of the opinion that we are all storytellers. And of course, if I'm telling a story to a good friend of mine, I might use words that I wouldn't use when I'm telling my child a story or my elderly mother. So a beautiful thing to me about bedside storytelling is that, as Kimberly mentioned, whoever that person is, I do my best to tailor that story to them. And there are all kinds of clues all over the room, such as if there are flowers in the room, or a balloon, or maybe I could tell that somebody takes really good care of their hair, or they have beautiful fingernails, or maybe they look really lonely. And so I offer a menu of stories, as I'm about to do to you. I say, well, here's some of your options. A happily ever after story, religious, a folk tale, a legend, or I could make something up right here on the spot just for you. And sometimes people are very definite about, I need to laugh, or I am very religious and I miss my church, or, oh, I like a legend. So for all of you, I've already decided for you that you would like a folktale. And this folktale is called One Wish. So I invite you to settle back in your bed as the patient, or in a chair if you're sitting in a chair, and feel free to close your eyes if that's how you listen better. And if you fall asleep, that is for a couple of days, you haven't gotten much sleep. Maybe you think the food is really good, which I personally think it is, but maybe not to you, or you just miss your own cooking. And of course, you miss probably your own bed. And so you really, as patients, people really don't have a lot of control over what's happening. You don't want to say no to the doctor or the nurse, probably, because they're there to help you, or to occupational therapy, or to the pharmacist, or whoever comes in that room. But when an artist in residence comes in, you can say, no, I am not interested. What is that? And never mind, because I don't want it. And I will say, I hope you feel better. Thank you. And I will leave. And I have watched people's faces light up just at that control of the ability to say no and have someone respond appropriately to that no. Well, of course, I hope they say yes. And I have a story that just happened this week with a patient on acute care for elders. I tried to see him once in the morning, and he said, oh, come back later. So I came back a couple hours later, and he said, could you come back tomorrow? And I said, sure. So I came back the next day, and he looked at me and he goes, I really don't want a story. And I said, okay, that's fine. But then he noticed a watch I was wearing, and he started telling a story about his father and how his father retired from the railroad, and his retirement gift was this beautiful watch, and he went on to describe it. And then he goes, oh, okay, tell me a story. And it was just so fascinating, because it was really the connection of his story that invited me into him, into his life, into that moment. So I did end up telling him a story after 3 no's. So here's your story. So once upon a time, there lived a man named John, and he was very poor. he was very loving, but he was very poor of money, kind of poor. And he lived with his wife and his elderly parents in a very small cabin on the edge of a great estate that was owned by a very wealthy man, wealthy of money and poor of heart. And the wealthy man had told John, "You are welcome to hunt in this region, but you are not allowed to come onto the estate and hunt. That is for me and only for me." Well, John hunted in the appropriate area for years and years. And over the years, was such a good hunter that soon there was nothing left to hunt. And his family was growing hungry and winter was coming. And he thought, I have to risk it. I just have to go onto the estate. So he snuck through the fence and he was walking through the woods when he came upon a deer that could feed his family for that winter and the next winter. And John pulled back his bow and arrow, and just as he was about to release his arrow, the deer said, "If you spare my life, I will grant you a wish." Well, John dropped his bow and arrow, and he thought, "Oh my goodness, I am so hungry, I am hallucinating. I think that deer just spoke to me." Well, the deer started walking toward him, completely unafraid. "We'll get 3 wishes." And the deer said, "Oh, you're right, but I only have 1. So go home and talk to your family and meet me here tomorrow with your 1 wish." So John went home, he burst into the cabin, and he told his wife and his father and his mother. And his wife said, "Well, it's obvious what to wish for, John. We have longed for a baby. That's all we've wanted for years and years, and we haven't been able to have a baby. So go back and say you wish for a baby." And John's mother said, I'm sorry to be so selfish, but John, I would give anything if I could see again. She had lost her vision. "My dearest, if you could wish for me to see again, that would be so wonderful. And I know you want a baby, but that might happen." And John's father said, "Oh my goodness, I am so selfish too. I wish that I could walk again." His father had debilitating arthritis and wasn't able to walk anymore. And all of them said, "I'm sorry to be so selfish, but this is what I wish for. This would be the best thing." And John listened to his mother and to his wife and to his father. And finally he said, "Please stop. Please stop." He said, "I'm going to go out and sleep under the stars and trust that the right wish will come to me. All of you, please leave me in peace." So John took some blankets and his pillow out, and he did sleep under the stars. And he asked the great spirits to please guide him and what would be best for him and what would be best for his family. And he fell asleep very peacefully. And he woke up in the morning and rolled up his blanket and put it on the porch along with the pillow and walked back to the forbidden land and under the fence. And there was the deer waiting for him. And the deer said, "What is your wish?" And John said, "Thank you for giving me time to think about it. This is my wish: to go home, open the door of my cabin, and see my wife holding our beloved baby boy as my mother strokes his head, commenting on how dark his hair is, while my father walks over to see if it is indeed dark." Well, the deer laughed and said, "Your wish is granted. You are a very, very smart, kind man. Go home." And John ran home, and when he opened the door to the cabin, it was exactly as he had wished for. And of course, everyone lived happily ever after. The end. So what I hope is happening wherever you are is that maybe that story sparked a laugh or a smile or a memory. And then if you and I were together in your hospital room, we would talk about that. Or maybe you fell asleep and it was just a peaceful, natural way to fall asleep and I tiptoed out of the room. Or maybe you just say thank you and I say thank you and we leave can be aware that the offer might not be taken, which is fine. And it might be. And it's really just a human to human saying, I see you and I hear you and I am glad to be with you. And I think that goes a long way along with medicine and therapies for healing. So thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of it and hearing these just inspirational things that you guys do. If anybody does have a question, toss it in the chat. We will get it answered by Kimberly or Elizabeth. We're going to start out with, how can we apply the tenets of arts and medicine at home? Can we do that?
Elizabeth, I'm going to let you take that one. An opportunity to talk about Zentangle and other things.
Okay. I love that question. That is such a great question. I think, I don't know about all of you, but during the pandemic, I kind of created a very weird character that just has kept me company when I'm lonely. I'm going to spare you that. But yes, at home, one thing I think that most of us really relate to is music, like turning on music. That I know I grew up in the 70s, so the Bee Gees are very close to my heart. And when I hear that music, I feel young again. So it invites dancing if I'm washing the dishes or just hanging out. So music is one way in. Also, this art form of Zentangle that's been mentioned, it is a relaxing, meditative way of creating beautiful images from structured patterns. So something in Zentangle is just looking around, like my blouse, for instance, or the paneling or our ceilings, or particularly nature, especially in springtime. What are the patterns that we see? Could we draw them? Not for what do they think they're saying and what is the story around that? Because I know my mom, when she was little, thought they were saying, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the public. And she was like, why are we saying something to the public? So I think it's just tapping into what's already there and maybe putting a little artistic slant to it.
And I'll add too, we hear a lot about self-care and the importance of self-care. And of course, that has been really critical during the pandemic when many of us were at home, living completely different lives as before the pandemic. And self-care can really encompass anything that you enjoy doing. So it could be an art form, it could be gardening or cooking or baking. And of course, we know a lot of people have been baking and cooking also during this time. But really, it's about self-care. It's about allowing yourself time, carving out the time, understanding that is really critical for your health and well-being, and should be just incorporated into everybody's lives. I know, a lot of people kind of, I'll say this at least before pre-pandemic, kind of take pride in like working late or working hard or work, just like there was this kind of, this ideal that, working was really great. Well, we know that that's not necessarily true. And so that if you prioritize self-care, as much as your work, then that's really where for, the healing can take place. And again, it can be any type of art form or creative type of outlet. And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. It might not look, pretty, or it might not, but just try it. Just let yourself play. So spring. But really what we look for in an artist in residence are very specific criteria. So of course, we look for someone who has either a degree in their art form and or are professional, practicing professionally. we look for someone who can really set aside, and I think about this because my background is in performance, and so, sometimes we're used to people come to see us perform, and we think people are going to enjoy it and are coming to, specifically to hear us or see us. But so we're looking for people who can really kind of take that ego, and set it aside and understand that we're coming into people's lives at possibly the most vulnerable time, or one of the most vulnerable times. So you have to be able to not take it personally if they don't want to see you, because that's okay. And and then the ability to be really present with people, to be in the moment, and to just follow their lead. Sometimes the artist may take the lead, but sometimes let the patient take the lead. And then there's a lot of work that we do, just kind of personal work that we do to self-reflection, mindfulness. And then, of course, there's all the pieces that we have to make sure that we're complying with all of the hospital requirements. So there's HIPAA and infection control and, all those processes, because we really want to be, a seamless integration into the healthcare system. And we, our primary goal is, of course, to enhance healing. So being able to know when, is this patient, is this causing stress? Is this sewing causing stress? Okay, well, we need to reevaluate. And so we always say that, to do this kind of work, you come with a plan. You're always ready, you're organized environment. And I will say too, Elizabeth and really everyone, but it's about partnerships, creating partnerships with the nurses and the nurse managers and the staff on those units. And so they get to know you and your work really well. And they'll say, oh, wow, you really, can you see, this patient, because I've told them about your work. They're really interested, or, this might, they've been isolated, they've been here for weeks. Maybe this would be of interest to them. So it's kind of an overall look.
You mentioned about not taking things personally. If somebody says, I don't want you to come and visit me today. Do you ever find yourselves growing an attachment to the patients, especially when it comes to emotional?
Yes, I can speak to that. Yes, the first unit I worked on was, and I still do work on, is the bone marrow transplant unit. And I'm thrilled to say that when I started in 2013, the average length of stay for a patient was 3 weeks. And because of the improved medicine and treatment, it's now 2 weeks, which is incredible in that short amount of time. But you can get really close to somebody in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. That the first man that he actually went to the nurse secretary after I'd seen him a couple of times, and he asked her, when's that story lady coming back? And she told me that when I came on the unit and said, please go see this patient. And I went to see him, and I'm very sad to say that he passed away, but I still think of him with such affection, and I would say even love, of just, we just connected. And I think all of us have had that experience just of meeting someone, and it's almost maybe like a past life, or just so many things in common, or a similar sense of humor. And so the hospital won't discharge people if they don't, have a plan in place. And so there was a man on the acute care for elders that was there for months and months. And I would always go see him, and sometimes he'd say yes, and sometimes he'd say no. And then once I told him a story that he really liked, and he said, I think I'd like a copy of that one. And I went and wrote it up and gave him a copy of it. And I think I just to kind of go back to the last question of, it is such a hard and good lesson in humility to be an artist in residence, because it is not about us. It is just so completely. And so I feel like the very best of me needs to show up, because if I take it personally, I'm not going to be able to knock on the next door and truly be available to that person. And so that's why Kimberly was speaking to the self-care and, what am I doing? And am I staying true to the mission? Do I need to maybe take a day off and just chill out from this for a while? Because I'm a performer also, and I love to perform, and storytelling bedside is not that. And so I have to keep performing in my regular life to feed that need so that I can show up at the hospital. And I think that's another important part of being an artist in residence, to maintain our art in a performative or whatever way so that we can be in the hospital as artists in residence.
Good deal. Well, Elizabeth, Kimberly, thank you so much.
Arts and medicine, and that'll pop up with information. But we do, of course, it's paused during the pandemic, but there talks about reinstating volunteers. And so if anybody is interested in volunteering, we love having volunteers. They're very, it's a great opportunity to see what the work is and support the artists. So, or a donation, we would always be happy to take a donation as well.
All right, Elizabeth, Kimberly, once again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and spending time with us.
Thanks so much for having us.
That was great. Thank you.
And just a heads up to those who attended, a replay of today's webinar will be made available online tomorrow. Now, with more about the UAB Office of Planned Giving, I've got some information to pass along to y'all. A planned gift can help you make a powerful and lasting difference to the UAB programs that means the most to you. Planned gifts can offer creative, flexible strategies for your estate and charitable planning. These techniques make use of legal and tax strategies to best suit your unique situation, help you accomplish your personal and philanthropic goals. Claire, go ahead and toss that up there. Thank you so much. Some types of planned gifts allow you to maintain control and flexibility over your assets while supporting UAB in the future. Others allow you to obtain an annual income and an immediate tax deduction. Still others allow you to reduce or eliminate capital gains tax. The UAB Office of Planned Giving is there to help accomplish your philanthropic goals through a legacy gift. Reach out to them today and learn more about these types of gifts and find out how they may be a good fit for you or a loved one. And there you see the email addresses for Kimberly Kopic, who we met earlier today, and Mary Jane Gibson, kkopic@uab.edu and MJ Gibson @uab.edu. Meanwhile, don't miss out on upcoming virtual events through our office. On July 13th, we're starting a special series, The Science of. This first webinar will explore the science of broccoli with Dr. Trenji Tolofsbal, professor of biology in the College of Arts and Sciences. On September 21st, we will welcome Dr. Stephen Watts, professor in the Department of Biology, for the science of shrimp. Then on October 12th, we will explore the science of cravings with Dr. Holly Wyatt, a professor within the School of Health Professions Department of Nutrition Sciences. We're also going to be adding a webinar to that series that will take place in August. We're just finalizing all the details on that. You can register for all of our events and get more information online at alumni.uab.edu/events. Looking for an alumni podcast to get you through your commute to and from work or while you're in the office? Check out UAB Green and Told. Episodes drop every other week and feature members of the UAB community. You can find the podcast on Spotify and iTunes, or visit alumni.uab.edu/green and told. Be sure to stay on top of all things alumni on social media. We are at UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also look up us on LinkedIn by searching UAB Alumni Career Community. Finally, if you want more information about the National Alumni Society, visit us at alumni.uab.edu or email alumni@uab.edu. So once again, thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion with Elizabeth Vanderkamp and Kimberly Kirklin. Have a great afternoon, and as always, go Blazers.